Hello, everybody. My name is Dratnos, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the new upgrade system because Blizzard has just released an FAQ about how it works, and it reveals quite a bit about this system, although there are still a few open question marks. So, for those who didn't watch, I made a video going through their first post, but the TLDR is that gear that drops from basically any content can be upgraded up fairly high item level using these Drakes and Worms Shadowflame crests. You can bring items that drop from normal or heroic raid all the way up to 437. Items that drop from heroic raid can be brought up to 441 as well using an aspects crest. And this FAQ says where they come from, which is obviously normal, heroic, mythic, and LFR content, plus a little bit of outdoor world content for the normal and LFR crests, plus 6 to 10, 11 to 15, and 16 up keystones with an emphasis on doing it in time. Now, this also tells you how many you get per dungeon or raid clear. And the TLDR is that just by clearing normal or heroic Aberrus, you will get most of your cap of 10 crests per week from that clear. You'll get like 110 or maybe 115 of your 150 fragments cap per week because it takes 15 fragments to make a crest. And you can get 150 fragments per week, basically. So if you clear on the first week, normal and heroic raid, you only have to do a few keys if you actually care about hitting the cap for Worms and Drakes. Otherwise, you can just focus on, if you can do the 16s or higher week 1, farming these Aspect crests instead. Now, what's the point of the Aspect crest? Well, you actually need less of them for upgrades than any of the other types of crest because you can only ever use one per item. You can only ever use it on an item that drops from heroic raid or like a 17 or higher would be my guess. And you can take it up using the heroic crests to 437 and then using one mythic crest to 441. Or, and this is the more powerful use of these crests, you can use it to make Enchanted Aspect Shadowflame Crest, which is the replacement for Concentrated Primal Infusion. And this requires 4 Aspects crests, and it can be used to bring crafted gear up to 447. Now, 447 is big. That is 3 item levels higher relative to last season for the crafted gear. So crafted gear is going to be the equivalent of 421 instead of 418, which is really powerful. Crafted gear, there's another piece of evidence that they are planning to do this, is that crafted gear on PTR has already been bumped to 421 as well. So it does look like that's possibly what's happening, or both of these were mistakes in the same direction, but it says 447 in a lot of places about the crest, right? It says, it can make the gear go all the way up to 447, which, that's like 3 item levels below very, very tippy top of gear next patch. So really, really powerful crafted gear. That being said, so you will upgrade your existing crafted gear, but your existing crafted gear, it's not like you can just upgrade all of it using all of your Enchanted Aspect Shadowflame crest each week, because you also will need to use, it looks like, one of these Sparks of Shadowflame, which are going to be the replacement for Sparks of Ingenuity, and which you'll need to bring your gear, I assume, to Season 2 level. So, depending on the Spark release cadence, my suspicion is you are going to want to make sure that every single Spark of Shadowflame you get access to, which we don't know what the cadence is going to be on that yet, but it might be similar to last time of like 1 every 2 weeks, plus a bonus 1 at the start, something like that. If it's a similar cadence of Spark content, then you'll want to make sure that you always have enough Aspects crests to make the Enchanted crest for that Spark. And then you can use the remaining Shadowflame crests, Aspects crests, for upgrades to 441 from 437. And as long as you don't get too many Sparks, you'll actually have way more Aspects crests than you need just by if you farm them out of M+, which you do need to do like 13 dungeons in a week to hit the cap out of just M+, but if you do some Mythic Raid bosses, you will get some from that, and you'll need to do less keys. So all in all, it's actually quite a bit less of a grind than the Concentrated Primal Infusion grind was for players that did that early in last patch. And that's the main use of the Aspect Shadowflame crests, right? Is actually this little item. I suspect that you're going to have more of these Aspect crests than you need. The Worms crests and the Drake's crests, on the other hand, I mean, these things are really powerful. So you can make Enchanted Worms crests as well and bring crafted gear to 437. I think that's going to be a bait. I think you're going to want to not do that because you can just go straight to the Aspects crest and save those 3 Worms crests that it takes to make this, and use them to instead bring gear from Heroic, from a Heroic early boss or Heroic mid or late boss all the way up to 437. Cool. Or you can actually bring normal gear. If a gear drops from normal raid, you can take it up to 437 using, 3 Drake's crests and 4 Worms crests, which that's quite a lot. You can only do that for 2 or 3 pieces a week on average. But, if you do that for a couple of pieces of gear, and then you're also, using some Aspect crests to upgrade your crafted gear to 447, this is going to be very powerful compared to last patch, right? Like if you compare to last patch, normal gear that dropped stayed normal eye level, and crafted gear was 3 item levels lower, and heroic gear that dropped stayed heroic item level. This time around, we're going to be able to very early, very quickly, within like the first 2 or 3 weeks of the patch, we're going to be able to take normal and heroic gear all the way up to either heroic end boss or mythic first boss eye level, right? And our crafted gear is higher relative eye level as well. It's a very, very powerful crafted system. And yeah, it seems like the strategy is going to be make sure that for every spark of Shadow Flame that you can find, which we don't know what the cadence is on that yet, that you're going to want to make sure that you have an Aspects enchanted Shadow Flame crest for that. And then otherwise, just try not to use them too spuriously, but you can't even really go all that wrong with using them because if you use, crests on like shoulders and then you drop better shoulders that are better stats, you won't need to use crests on that new pair of shoulders because of the way the system works. Again, if you don't remember, you don't actually have to use the crests if you're upgrading a piece that you already have higher item level in that slot. There is therefore some incentive to wait for your Great Vaults and for future clears so that you can see what you get and then potentially make sure that you're using your crests in other slots instead. But you got so many of these, 10 per week per difficulty type. I actually suspect it's going to be these Worms crests that you maybe do run out of the first 2 weeks, but it's hard to imagine actually ever running out of Aspects crests because you can only ever use 1 per item and then 4 per crafted piece. So unless they're giving us a bunch more Sparks of Shadow Flame than they gave us of Sparks of Ingenuity, this is going to be... it's going to be huge. This is going to be a very powerful patch in terms of player item level very early on, even without doing stuff like split raids, just from using this upgrade system to upgrade even just the M+ gear. And also you'll use... So I think the best use case for the Drakes and Worms, the Drakes pieces is going to be to take tier that drops from normal and bring it up. And then you're going to want to save the Worms crests for that tier, or for M+ gear that drops as well, or from gear from the later parts of the raid. And you're going to want to try and avoid using too many upgrades on just boring generic items out of normal raid that you could get better from an M+ key. That's something you'll probably want to try and stay away from. But again, the system just spits out so many crests that any mistake you make, you will be able to correct within a week's time or 2 weeks' time. It's not like Valor, where if you int your first Valor decision, you're feeling it for months, right? It's much, much more friendly than that. So, yeah, I think this is cool. It does mean we're going to be really powerful really early on in the patch, which does mean that it will be harder for them to have the raid get nerfed automatically by player power going up, because player power is going to spike much faster this patch than it did in Vault of the Incarnates, especially for players that aren't doing, split runs and stuff like that, which I think that's good, provided Blizzard is then quick to nerf bosses that need nerfs, that otherwise would be nerfed by getting better gear, right? If everybody is getting to 447 and 441 and 437 gear in the first 2 weeks of the patch, then they can't rely on the DPS checks getting much easier for guilds over time, right? And they're going to need to make sure that they nerf appropriately. But as long as they do that, this system seems like it's going to be very player friendly. So I think it's going to be very cool. But that is just some of the thoughts about it. If you want to read through this whole post, it's mostly just a Q&A talking about it. The thing that I found out about, or that I pointed out when I read the original one about there being some conflicting text there, was indeed, I was right about it being, you can't upgrade mythic raid drops. And yeah, that's how it all works. That's all there is to it. We don't know if this system is staying into next patch, or into future patches after this, but it is definitely it's definitely a very powerful system and an important one to understand the implications of, I think. I will make videos as they change these things, particularly if the crafted gear changes from 447 back down to 444. That would be... I guess that won't really change what we do too much, but it will nerf us by quite a bit in those first few weeks as well. But either way, yeah, it's a huge system. It's a huge change, so hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.